Okay, we're gonna go on a little adventure. Hopefully, I have enough battery to last the whole trip, but I won't be able to talk during certain areas due to being so close to people. I'm always able to talk. Lots of dog barking. Okay. So, the purpose of this video finally emerges. I'm gonna count how many churches there are from my house to the gas station. And I will derive the point of this near the end. So here we have a Tabernacle Baptist church, which I always just tease about going past the death cult. So, that's number one. So, let's see. I will divulge one piece of information early. can talk quietly enough, is how this town isn't anything special. It's just one of many towns, and quite a few hundred towns if you consider the whole Bible Belt and the states that it stretches across. But it brings a pretty good point. Is any Christian, they'll come up if you ask them, especially the hardcore ones, but just churchgoers, they'll tell you that the book, their Bible, is true, no doubt in their mind. They don't even agree with each other. I mean, it'd be one thing in a town this size if you had several buildings and they were all the same, of all churches across the, United States for that matter, if they all preached this, had the exact same understanding, they all preached the same thing, that wouldn't make the Bible any more true. However, it would at least claim some level of consistency. The fact that there are so many different branches, which really relates to interpretations. Different groups, just individual churches in this town alone, they don't even agree with each other, which is the reason why one of our favorite lights is going to go off on me this time. It usually blinks off on me just as I walk up here. Here's the light. Probably can't see it that well. Sometimes it blinks off just as I cross. But yeah, generally speaking, why in the world do so many people say the same thing? I mean, they preach that they say the same thing, but simultaneously, if they all interpreted the book the same way that we'd interpret a recipe on how to bake bread. There might be more than one recipe to make bread, but they all have to be true. But, there's only so much left to interpretation to instructions. But when there's so many different interpretations, who's to say any of the branches got it right? I mean, I'm not a Christian, so I don't believe any of them. But, for the sake of argument, even if I were still a Christian, I plan to put a video out about why I'm not. Douglas here is sidetracking me. Here, we'll take I hate cutting corners, but when I have another church coming up, I'm going to show. Let's see here. We're doing 8 minutes. It might be a little longer than I anticipated, but I'm trying to walk quickly. So, up here in the corner, can't see it that well yet, there's another church. That'll be church number 2. Now, this by no means is all the churches in this town. This is just me covering a very short distance. This town's got at least 20 churches. 15 that I've seen with my bare eyes. But yeah, why are there, the book is true, and why do there need to be so many interpretations? Why don't everybody just agree with the same one? It kind of devaluates the information. No matter how you evaluate, here's this one. I'll get a sign of it so you know it's a church and not a house. One moment. I'm not doing this to show houses, just churches. So, here's the second one. It says Grace. It's Lutheran Church. So again, church number 2. So, what is the difference? If I've asked I don't mean to be an asshole when I say this, but when someone says, You know, if I ask them if they're a Christian, they're like, yeah. I'm like, are you a Jehovah's Witness? No. They give you a weird look. I'm like, are you a Mormon? No. Oh, you're a Catholic? Fuck no. You know, so it's like, you know, they do stigmatize their own. So look, we just ran around the corner, and you can see two of them side by side. I'll point them out separately, because I'll have to cut the video short to make it memorable. I don't want it to be too long. I mean, if I just keep walking, I'll just keep passing churches. Come as you are. So here's another church. We just ran around the corner, and there's two more. We'll see if we can get this on here. It's a little bright. Yeah, come as you are. Well, what if you're gay? What if you're, you know, anything else? Like, I mean, I say bullshit. So there's church number 3. Oh, look, they even got a Catholic church. Isn't that fascinating? There's actually 2 Catholic churches I'm aware of. One here and one at the opposite end of town. Which really speaks volumes. Why? And the reason why I'm going to stop off with this one is because every single time I go to the gas station to get something to drink, more bullshittery. But anyhow, I see this dove with this fucking twig hanging out of its mouth, and it's talking, you know, it's referring to the flood, right? Well, I'm gonna turn around here. I'm not gonna go all the way to the gas station. That little light way in the background is the gas station. There's no more between that small stretch, but shit, that's 4 of them. So my question is, you know, I've seen that dove earlier on random park. My question is, I mean, they flaunt that dove like, ooh, have faith, blah, 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 and stuff. I'm like, the earth was, you know, according to their own story, the earth was flooded for, you know, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but it was flooded for a year, according to the story. And no one will face the process, you know, will look at it and say, hey, if the water covered the topless mountains, let's just forget how cold and how thin the air is. You could throw all kinds of things into this equation. But let's stick with one simple fact. Since the dove had a twig in its mouth, my question is, where the fuck did it get that twig? Does anybody know any regular tree, you know, I'm not talking about fucking coral or shit underneath the ocean. You know, that's another variable I'm going to bypass for the sake of simplicity. You know, the ocean mixing and stuff like that. Ocean pressure affecting life. Yada yada. What fucking tree, any tree that is normally on land, can survive being underwater for a fucking year? I mean, does that make any fucking sense out? But yet they flaunt it right there on top of their thing. No one asks. I mean, and I get it. You know, if you're, you know, brainwashed, or that's just, it's kind of a cheap word. Indoctrinated, I think is a better choice of words. If you're indoctrinated, you know, to not ask questions. You know, I've brought up before where in elementary school, I used to ask questions. Now, you know, just like in school, I go to Sunday school and I'd raise my hand. And other students would laugh at me, you know, snicker. And the teacher understood I had a question. And they couldn't answer my questions. Because one time I asked about, well, how did the sea fish, you know, or fossils, get all the way up to, quit eating that. How did the fossils get to the top of the mountains? Well, you know, for a second grader, I'm going to believe anything. And they tell me, oh, it was the flood, that's proof. Well, by the time I was in 4th or 5th grade, you know, our science teacher started, you know, was showing us stuff from, see, Bill Nye and the Science Guy, right? And You know, he explained plate tectonics. I remember it quite well because he was using cookies as an example of how they can, you know, as how plate tectonics run over each other. You can look it up yourself. I'm sure it's out there. But yeah, so I brought that. I raised my hand and I said, you know, specifically, I just honest kid. I'm like, hey, we learned about plate tectonics last weekend or last week during school. I said that this sounds like a more reasonable explanation than your flood explanation that there's no evidence of. And I didn't have the critical thinking skills to question like the trees being underwater, which is my point. You know, if you're raised not to ask questions, and there's a lot of questions that you just generally don't even think of. But yeah, you know, they quit answering my questions. Handy Park, I don't know if you can see that. This is such a fucking redneck town. Like, I can't wait to be out of this piece of shit town. Even the name for parks, Handy Park, that's just fucking ridiculous. But yeah, it's getting at 16 minutes. I'm gonna cut it short. But anyhow, just want to show that a town that's indoctrinated, you know, don't ask questions, but it's really fucking weird how they need that many churches in order to, you know, they all have, you know, there's way more than that I just showed you. That's just to show you an idea how compact they are. And yet none of them even question the other churches. Like, unless you pin two Christians against each other, you know, and ask them a question, they had two different answers, they might argue. It's just silly. And how compact the churches are in just this town alone, as an example, by no means the only example. It's like the elaboration of a bad lie. You know, the more you lie, the more you have to add to it to cover your previous lie. Okay, we're getting back into where the people live. Don't want to wake up the sheeple. That's all I got to share.